Hello and welcome to the Ivy and the Arch podcast, a Major League Baseball themed podcast with an emphasis on the Chicago Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals. My name is Aaron, that's Caleb to my right, and here we are for episode one. This has been years in the making, and I thought we might have done it back when I had no kids and you weren't teaching yet, and we all had all the free time in the world, but here I am, and here you are, so better late than never, right?
Yeah, life works in mysterious ways, so it has definitely led us to this path of finally getting this thing off the ground running, and I'm excited to be here.
I am as well. There's a lot of Cubs podcasts out there, a lot of Cardinals one. I don't think I've ever seen one done that kind of covers both fan bases. And we were talking earlier this week about how Wilson Contreras might single-handedly reignite the hatred feud between these two teams, and that might not be a bad thing. In all honesty, I think the dynamic between these two teams has been a little soft over the last few years. I think, especially when Colton Wong left, he was kind of a real big antagonist of the Cubs, was not a fan of us in any way, shape, or form. And ever since then, I feel like it's been pretty mellow. But I'm excited to see some sparks fly this year. I think we're gonna have a little more animosity, a little more showboating than we have previously. It should make for a pretty good, pretty entertaining season series between the two teams.
I agree. When you have, two competitive teams that are fighting for a playoff spot the entire year, it's just a much different feeling. Um, Obviously, the addition of, one of those franchise's beloved players swapping sides will definitely add fuel to that fire. But, the last couple of years with, the Cubs, I'll just say their competitiveness was not on the level that I feel like it's on this year. So I think we're definitely going to see a lot more of that 2016, 2017 sort of rivalry going on.
And I think it'll really tick up if the guys that the Cubs brought in have the bounce back years that they're hoping they do. I think if Bellinger is back to even somewhat vintage MVP candidate Cody Bellinger and is hitting 30 bombs a year, I think if Mancini can stay healthy, I think if Hosmer does, something above average, I think it'll be competitive. But I think there's a lot more dogs on this Cubs team than there have been recently, and a lot of guys who don't have the weight of the 2016 championship on them, don't have the weight of needing to win a championship or trying to keep the core alive. Like the core is gone. Everything is done. Kyle Hendricks is the only guy left, and he couldn't care less, honestly, about that at this point in his career. He's just trying to stay on the field. But I think it's a whole new mentality for the first time in a long time, for this Cubs team. And a lot of these guys aren't going to be here after this year probably, but it's a fresh mindset. It's okay, we're going to go out here and win, but we have nothing to prove along the way. We're just going to kind of go out and do our thing and see what happens. And like I said, that's something we haven't seen from this team in a while. And to your point, I think that's going to help make this, season series between these two teams something that's going to be really worth watching.
I agree. Unfortunately, it comes in the first year of the expanded schedule format where
Right.
they'll play each other, what is it, five times less?
Yeah, I think
Something along those
I
lines.
was listening to Talking Baseball, and I think they said that it's 14 times you play in the division instead of 18 or 19. So it's five
Right.
less times. They were also talking about too along those lines, not just the Cubs and Cardinals, but the whole Central end of itself. We're not a strong division. We're not really like the Cardinals are up there. The Brewers can be up there if they want to be, and that's how it's been the last few years. But besides that, the Cubs have been a punching bag, the Pirates have been a punching bag, and the Reds have been a punching bag. But you take away 5 games from each team and force us to play teams in the AL East, AL West, you know, more than we ever have. I think it's going to make it, a lot harder on this division because there's not like that clear cut, like juggernaut of a team. Like the Cardinals, by all means, are a great team, but I don't think I'd consider them a juggernaut in the NL. And by nature of that, I think we're going to have a lot more competitive and tougher games outside of the NL Central that we wouldn't be used to having because we're just used to beating up on the Cincinnati Reds and the Pirates all season long.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely going to be. I'm curious how that balance of playing the Reds and the Pirates and, the Cubs the last couple of years, how that mixes with, they will get to play the Royals more
Right.
often or um, the Tigers and the A's and, teams they don't usually see more often than once every 3 years. So I don't know what that balance will be. I'm sure you'll see the win totals down a little bit, but
Right.
I'm eager to see kind of what that competitiveness looks like.
And I think it'll be interesting too, because this might be the first year where we kind of have, with all this new expanded, divisional play, the DH coming to the National League kind of gave away, gave an advantage to the National League to always have that at this point. So it's not like you're going to play an American League team and they're used to having their DH, and so they know how to operate that lineup. That the shift restrictions, in the pitch clock, everything, all the new rule changes kind of feel like it makes it more of a level playing field, regardless if you're in the National League or the American League. I think it's just going to be the dynamics of now you're facing more teams that you normally didn't. They operate differently. The Rays are more of an opener kind of team. How are you going to counteract that? I don't know. I think the whole dynamic will be really interesting to watch and see how it favors or hurts a lot of the teams that are supposed to do good this year.
I agree. Some of the initial feedback I had seen is um, I think somebody had said that the Red Sox don't go to New York to play the Yankees until mid-June or early July, and that's just such a foreign concept compared
Right.
to seasons in the past.
Right.
So, and I know they're trying to do a lot of series. Obviously, if you're going out to the West Coast, you want to knock out a few series in a row. They did that in the past anyway, but with even more teams being on your schedule, I'm sure that's going to influence, if you're someone out on the East Coast, how many games in a row your team's playing on the West Coast. Because, I mean, if you're not starting a game on the East Coast until 9 or 10 at night, that could be pretty rough on the body. So,
Right.
and to stay up.
I wish I had the screenshot from Twitter that I saw of the teams, the total distance that they're traveling throughout the year ranking. I think a lot of the West Coast teams were kind of screwed in that aspect, flying around the league a lot more. Um,
Yeah,
but I think that's going to play into it too. A lot more travel than these guys are probably used to compared to like their home geographical areas that they would inhabit a lot.
right.
The other thing I was thinking of too is the Cubs and the Cardinals are playing in London this year. They're doing the London series, which I'm trying
Yeah,
to.
that was it was originally 2020, right? And it
Right,
got canceled because of the COVID season.
right. And I don't think. Did that happen last year? Did a team play internationally last year? I'm trying to remember if they did or not.
I think we had a team go to Mexico, right?
Right. Yep. They did. I'm trying to remember who it was, but that you're right. They did go to Mexico. Um, the London series. That's in July, isn't it?
It might be late June.
Late June. Okay, you may be right. I'm trying to pull up
Yeah,
the
I got it
schedule
right here.
here.
June 24th and 25th
Okay.
is the London series, and then let's see. Okay, I was wrong. 2019 was the last time it was played internationally, and that was the Red Sox and the Yankees,
And I think
and they
that
were in
that was
London.
the very first London series that was played, and it was a high scoring
Yeah,
series. I remember that too because it was a wonky ballpark.
yeah.
Wonky
Yeah, you
ballpark.
had a 17 to 13 game and a
Uh huh.
12 to 8 game.
Nutty. Absolutely nutty.
And actually, I didn't realize this. San Fran and the Padres are playing in Mexico, and that's late April.
Hmm. Interesting.
So you have two international series this year.
That's nice. I hope they do more of that. I think having games in Mexico and I think having a game somewhere abroad, in Europe is definitely a good way to grow the game. And I hope they keep it, especially for this London series, because the first time they did it, it was the Red Sox and the Yankees, two very historic rivaled franchises. They're doing the Cubs and the Cardinals this year. It's the same way. I'd
Hmm.
love to see the Giants and the Dodgers go out there one year and do it. Trying to think of other, significant rivalries in the game, but keeping it to where it like means more than it normally would, and especially keeping it teams that like are more internationally recognized or have stars that may be from those countries or around it, international stars, allowing fans maybe a chance to see them when they never would come to the states to see them play in person. Um, I think
Yeah.
MLB's got to
Well,
stay
yeah,
on
you
top of
got to
that,
market your stars for
right?
sure. Um, they've it's not that they've struggled with that. I just sometimes I think MLB takes the hardest way possible to
They do,
market the game.
they do,
I was sitting there looking at MLB TV this year. It's time to renew so I can watch spring training games.
right?
And fortunately, I live in the Chicago area, so I have no problem watching Cardinals games unless they're against the Cubs or the White Sox.
Right.
Um, then, got to go find the nearest bar and sit
Yeah.
down and watch the game.
Right.
But, I always think back to that specific location in I think Iowa where you're blacked out from like five different
It's
teams. Like
ridiculous.
you don't even want baseball fans at that
No.
point if you're blacking out that many teams from somebody from a state that doesn't even have a team.
Right. And you know, I
It's
think
ridiculous.
I think with the Bally Sports, you know, the RSN going bankrupt, probably, you know, foregoing on their debts and unraveling that whole market, I think we will see in the next several years teams starting to go more, you know, with their own home networks rather than regional. And at that point, less blackout restrictions. And hopefully we get to the point to where there's absolutely no blackout restrictions. Because if you're paying for an MLB TV subscription and you're paying $100 a year, however much it is, you should be able to watch all 30 teams wherever they are, wherever you live. I mean, it's that simple, and it's ridiculous that it's not that, and it's ridiculous that it's never been that. And
Yep.
you're just keeping it from the fans at that point, and it's not a good way to grow the game. So I do think
Yeah.
that'll eventually come through, and hopefully we remove the curtain on all the blackouts permanently.
Yep. And I'm just thinking about what the NFL did this year with their first year of their NFL Plus package,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved what they did. You could pay $5 a month and get, I think it was mobile only, so you couldn't pull it up on a Fire Stick or something, but
Yeah.
you'd have access to every team in the league. Um, that was just, I think that was a phenomenal idea. And then there was a $10 package too. I don't know, that may have been the TV version, but um, I know there's not as many games as the NFL. I think you could make the argument that the NFL is a lot more widely popular
Yeah.
than baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball has struggled with bringing in younger fans, and they've tinkered around with ideas on how to shorten the games, and they make the correlation that that brings in younger fans. I don't think that's it. Seriously think they have to sit down and realize that it is so hard to watch a baseball game, and you have to be subscribed to not only cable to watch a local team, but also like four or five streaming services
Right.
between Peacock and Apple TV. I know they were doing like a free thing last year, but it's just another thing you have to create an account for. Um, Fox Sports on Saturday nights sometimes. It's too much.
Yeah.
ESPN, there's too many apps, too many different. They have to simplify this
I agree.
in order to I guess fix their issue.
Yeah. 100% agree with you there. So I think we're going to move on to kind of just going over what our teams did this offseason, trades, signings, players that moved on, players that, you know, are just talking all crap to their old team for absolutely no reason whatsoever after we went, you know, moon and back for them. That's besides the point. All right, so Caleb, if you want to start with the Cardinals, kind of give us an overview of what they did this offseason and what moves you liked, what moves you didn't like, and everything in between.
Okay, yeah. Well, I got some major moves here, some notes on some major moves. That doesn't include like spring training invites, nothing that's a guarantee to be part of the team. But we'll just start at the top. This was actually just a couple weeks ago, or within the last week and a half or so. They did extend President of Baseball Operations John Mozeliak. He was on an expiring deal. I feel like if you truly watch the team and you really pay attention, you know he wasn't going anywhere. It was just a matter of when that extension was going to happen. Mo has always done taking off the wanting to be competitive lenses for a second. Mo has always done a really good job of barely ever bankrupting this team with a bad contract. The only one that comes to mind recently is the Dexter Fowler contract, and that was less than $100 million. You
Right.
really can't be that upset about
No.
you got 2.5 pretty solid years of Dex. Speaking of, former Cubs who didn't super disrespect their last team, he got 2.5 really good years of Dex. I know he had some injury issues, and the Cardinals were really his last team anyway, besides some lingering uh, Angels and
I think he had a spring
very
training invite.
shortly lived. Yeah,
Yeah.
from what, the Blue Jays, I
Yep.
think.
Blue
I don't know.
Jays. I don't think I ever saw a picture of him in camp with the Blue Jays, to be honest.
I don't think so either. I just know he had that bone spur in his heel. That
Mm-hmm.
was basically the dagger. Um, but in my opinion, what Dex brought to that team, just on a side note, it brought so much like life and energy back to that team that they were severely missing after 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was worth the 87 or $85 million
Oh
alone.
yeah. Yep.
So they brought in Mo. I mean, he's apparently got some dirt on Dick Montfort, and I won't say, the Goldschmidt thing is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Goldschmidt was kind of nearing his last season, with the MVP year. I don't want to say it was a complete, not repeatable thing, but I don't think anybody saw that coming. So for them to pounce on Goldschmidt when they did, that was pretty good by Mo. And he doesn't really give out that huge bad contract all that often. On the flip side of things, you don't really get that super exciting deal.
Right.
Um, for them to have gotten Arenado, that was fantastic. I didn't see that happening. I heard rumblings that it probably would have happened in 2020 if not for the COVID season, and that kind of shut things down. But, good on Mo for getting that done. You got your third baseman for the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Oh yeah.
Pitching staff, they lost Quintana. He signed a 2-year deal with the Mets. A little upset about that they couldn't make that work. I think Quintana had as much right to stay in that rotation as anybody outside of maybe Wainwright, and that's simply on seniority. They also lost Alex Reyes. He was non-tendered. He signed a 1-year deal with the Dodgers. I don't know, man. I think back to how many off seasons and how many trade deadlines that Alex Reyes' name was considered untouchable, and it just blows my mind that this is the ending with the team that drafted him and uh, I guess brought him up. So good luck to Reyes with the Dodgers, but
He'll come
that's
out
a
throwing
little bit of a gut
110.
punch.
He'll come out throwing
I'm sure he
110
will.
and 60 innings, 120 strikeouts. It's usually how it goes with him.
Well, I thought it was fitting that the guy who single-handedly ended the 2021 Cardinals season, or yeah, 2021 Cardinals season, is the guy who the Dodgers brought in. He gave up that walk-off home run to Chris Taylor. So, but anyway, best of luck, Reyes. They brought in Contreras, 5-year, $87.5 million deal. Um, which obviously, Molina retired, Pujols retired, so there was some holes at both catcher and DH to be filled there. So Contreras kind of scratches that itch for you. They brought in a couple of 1-year, super low risk, super, if they get anything out of them, I think they'll be happy with Wilking Rodriguez and Guillermo Zuniga on 1-year deals. So you got those guys to fill out your bullpen a little bit, at least provide some competition. They also traded for Anthony Misevich I think it was from Kansas City, but I know he was in Seattle for a little bit. That one, I'm a little bit more optimistic about the production you could get from him in the bullpen. I'd like to see, I guess, some higher leverage situations throughout spring training with him, just to see if, change of scenery will help him with lowering that ERA a little bit. But I know he was kind of ticking north of 4 last season, so you'd like to see that lowered a little bit out of the bullpen. I think any notable subtractions I have here, Ben DeLuzio, I want to say he's with the Cubs, right?
Yes, when did he sign? It was more recently or either earlier on in the offseason. I'm looking here, figuring out when he was brought on board. 12-13 minor league deal with the Cubs.
Okay, so he, casualty of the 40-man. I already talked about Reyes and Quintana. Corey Dickerson, he was on a 1-year deal. He's with the Nats now. Perfect place for him.
Mm-hmm.
No eyes on him. Go out, hit the ball, Dick. And then yeah, Pujols and Molina are gone. As far as notable, uh, reductions from the team, that's pretty much it. They did send down James Nolly. I thought he was gonna be claimed, but he was, he cleared waivers and now he's just in Memphis. So, um, they did have coaching changes. They had Mike Maddox retire and then unretire and take a job with the Rangers. But, if you're having somebody toss Jacob DeGrom at you, how do you say no to that?
Right.
And then, oh my gosh, what is his name? The hitting coach. Why can I not think of his name?
Oh, I know who you're
From
talking
the
about.
Astros.
Yeah.
I am drawing a major blank right now.
Let me see.
Jeff Albert.
Yeah, there you go. There you
Yeah, Jeff Albert chose to leave, and I'm gonna guess he saw some criticism on a certain bird app
go.
or whatever that may have led to him leaving. I'm just gonna say this right now. I've never been a guy who's thought that pitching and hitting coaches make that giant of a difference. If the talent is there, it will present itself.
Yeah,
So I think situational hitting is more to blame for, any offensive struggles in the last couple seasons from the Cardinals, not entirely on Jeff Albert.
yeah,
But it was interesting that Mo came out and said he was ready to, offer extensions to both of those guys, and
yeah,
they chose to leave.
yeah,
So maybe a little bit of concern there. Um, but Joe McEwing took over as bench coach for Matt Holliday, who took the role and then stepped down.
that was a
Matt
weird.
Holliday,
That was a weird
it
little
was
moment.
weird. You know, I think he immediately was regretting not being around longer for his kids growing up. He's got, a whole lot going on in his life. So, um, Turner Ward took over the hitting coach responsibilities, and Dusty Blake, who worked closely under Mike Maddox, took over pitching. So, but that is kind of the biggest Cardinals offseason moves right there.
Yeah, I'll say on the Cubs' flip side of the coaching staff, I don't believe we had a whole lot of turnover on ours. Rossi's still the manager. I think Andy Green is still the bench coach. We had Tommy Hotovy retained, and he's the best pitching coach we've had in a long time. I know, like to your point, you said hitting and pitching coaches, they most of the time probably don't do a whole lot. If the talent's there, it's there. I think in Hotovy's case, I think he's taken the time with each of the, especially the project guys the Cubs have had, to really slow them down, fix their mechanics with what he can, offer them, and then just kind of see how the results go. But I've loved everything I've seen from him. I loved everything he said when he's interviewed about, the guys he's working with, the whole Cubs pitching infrastructure that they've built over the last couple of years, technology-wise, database-wise, seemingly has benefited a lot of the guys who have come. And I'm thinking with this new wave of prospects we have coming up, especially the depth of pitching that we're starting to build, I think that's going to pay dividends over the years. Um, but yeah, on the coaching side of things, not a whole lot changed. From the Cubs offseason standpoint, we had a couple guys obviously become free agents. Wilson Contreras, the whole trade deadline saga, the supposed lined up deal with Houston to acquire Jose Urquidy, I believe his name is. It was a 1-for-1 swap that the president of the Astros shot down. I thought it would have been a great swap for the Cubs. Pitching depth is always a good thing to have. Contreras was going to walk. Everybody and their mother knew that. I thought it would have been smart to get something for him at that point. Never came to be. They had the whole emotional last game at Wrigley, first game back, and they played out the rest of the year. Contreras went on, obviously, as we all know, to sign a deal with the Cardinals. 5 years, 80 million, I believe, was the deal.
87 and a half,
87
but
and a
yeah,
half.
right in that range.
Get a bag, Wilson. Love you for everything you did in 2016. I'm sure we've all seen his comments on Twitter, the videos that are surfacing around. I replied to one of them. I said, look, I have no doubt Contreras has animosity against the Cubs front office. I think that's pretty easy to be seen. He wanted to stay here, or he was just dejected by the contract offers or lack thereof. He probably just didn't get along with them, and he's the type of guy who's going to start stuff. He's gonna be all cryptic on social media. He's going to say what he wants to get people riled up. That's just who Contreras is. And I think if he can single-handedly throw that punch back into the Cubs Cardinals dynamic, you know what? Talk all you want. Talk all you want. Because I hope we boo the crap out of you when you strike out the first time. And I hope you pimp the crap out of your first home run at Wrigley. Get us going. Get this rivalry back to what it needed to be. So, if it took $87.5 million out of Mo's pocket and DeWitt's pocket to get this thing back started, I'm okay with that. Um, so we lost Contreras. We lost Wade Miley. Was so hurt last year and was disappointed because he's a workhorse when he's healthy, and he would have been a good innings eater. He had some stuff. His pitches still looked good. He was never coming back. We didn't have a spot for him, but it was tough not to see him pitch as much last year. Obviously, the Jason Hayward release, he signed a minor league deal with the Dodgers. They quote unquote have tinkered his swing. I saw a video of him doing some batting practice in spring training the other day, and it looks like he's got his hands a little further back than he used to, rather than having them kind of like outright and up. But the load is still the same. Like the only thing that seems tweaked is the hands back. His load and his little flinch he does is still the same. Maybe with the shift he can slap a few more up the right side. I don't know. I wish nothing but the best for him, but his time was long overdue to be gone. Franmil
Every
Reyes.
year we do, sorry,
No, no,
just
go
real
ahead.
quick. Every year we do these stance changes with guys who've
Right,
struggled for years.
right.
Um, I don't know how often it's ever worked or
Not
how many
often.
success stories come out of it, but being a Cardinals fan, I see this every spring training with Paul DeYoung.
Yep.
But I just, maybe it's just possible that the game has moved past him. So
Yeah,
again, like you said, I wish Hayward the best of luck, but I'm not sure how much just a minor change in his stance or where he's holding his hands is going to change too much for him.
he had a really nice COVID year in the shortened season, and it was just a one-off. I mean, there was a lot of expectation that he was needed to build off of that year in 2021, and he fell on his face, and he fell on his face in 22. And yeah, it was long overdue. The decision at the time, Clint Frazier was a fun signing last offseason for the Cubs. The decision to DFA him and keep Hayward on the roster was infuriating to a lot of us at the time. Rossi talked all about giving young guys at bats, and yet he continued to plug Hayward in right field or center if Suzuki was in right. And I don't know. It was, again, he is one of the key reasons the guys got together and won after the rain delay. His speech, nothing but the best for him and everything he's done for the organization. In Chicago, he opened a hitting center in Chicago for youth baseball. So he's got strong ties here still. So he was released. We non-tendered a couple guys. Rafael Ortega, who was kind of our funky leadoff center field guy for the rebuilding 2 years that we had. He's gone. I think he signed a minor league deal with the Yankees, if I remember that correctly. Braylon Marquez, uber talented pitching prospect at one point, just could not stay healthy. He was non-tendered to move a spot on the 40-man, but he ended up re-signing a minor league deal with the Cubs later in the offseason. Was happy to have him back. And then Alexander Vizcaino was another non-tender, and he was the second piece in the Rizzo trade alongside Kevin Alcantara. He never, I don't think, reported to the team, and if he did, it was only for a little bit. He went MIA and then just never reported back to the team. So, essentially, if I would be more upset if Kevin Alcantara wasn't looking like a future top 20 prospect in the game. Getting him for Rizzo straight up seems like a steal. Getting him essentially straight up for Rizzo at this point, and then PCA straight up for Baez is like we just robbed probably two top 20 outfielding prospects in the game for half a year of control. I mean, obviously the Yankees got more with Rizzo, but
I think the Mets are going to look back on that in a couple years and just be devastated by that
yeah,
trade.
I mean,
I know they were trying to get an exciting young player, but it's a half season of a guy who strikes out a whole lot,
right,
still strikes out a whole lot, and
right.
now you're looking at one of the Cubs' top prospects.
I mean, if he can hit 260, 270, he's going to be one of the best defensive center fielders this game has seen in a long time. He threw out a guy from almost the warning track today trying to tag third on a pop out. His arm is
Hmm.
ridiculous. He can, he can range it all over center field. He's going to do great out there. And I look forward to seeing him build on his minor league season from last year. We also released Alfonso Rivas. He was kind of the first base staple after Rizzo between him and Frank the Tank. Never really phased out. He was a nice lefty bat, had a little bit of pop. Defensively was okay, just never really put it together. He was a great minor league hitter, as a lot of these guys are. They're like 4A hitters is what I think we call them, guys who just hit super well in the minors and then just can't seem to do it on the major league roster. PJ
Yeah.
Higgins, my guy, the backup catcher, cleared waivers, elected free agency. Gonna miss him, but I like our backups now between Gomes and Barnhart sharing duties. The depth scares me a little bit, but we did sign Dom Nunez and Luis Torrens to be our backup catchers in the minors. Both guys are still relatively young, 27 and 28, so we've got some good depth behind us at catcher at this point. Drew Smiley re-signed with the Cubs mid-December. He wasn't a guy I necessarily expected to bring back. I was kind of wondering if they were going to target any of the mid-tier starters in that range, and I'm glad they did. When he was healthy, he was effective. He eats innings. He's good assurance if a lot of the guys get hurt, and he wanted to be here. That was the other thing. He talked about how he wanted to stay here, and that's the kind of guys you need in the clubhouse, especially with a bunch of new guys coming in. You want guys who have been here and who wanted to come back and be here. And so I thought his coming back was a great thing. Cody Bellinger was another one of the signings in December. I had a hunch all offseason that the Cubs were his best fit. I thought they would have given him the most bounce back potential in the lineup to start. I thought they would have also given him the most money, quite frankly. I don't know if another team would have shelled out $18 million with the buyout option to bring him back. Jameson Tyone, starting pitching addition, 4 years. I think that's a great deal. Again, you can never have enough pitching. JMO, he was good in New York last year. He's got a knack for getting better on the mound. He produces when he's out there, and he seems like he already gels really well with the team. So having a vet, like him in the middle of that rotation is going to do nothing but good things. Brad Boxberger was a sneaky little 1 year signing for the Cubs. He's been a good bullpen arm for most of his career. I think he's going to be able to anchor down the back end of that bullpen. And then there's Dansby Swanson, the last
Dansby.
shortstop on the board. I was really, we went through the whole Correa saga last year where we all thought we were going to get him. And then we ended up signing Jonathan VR instead and Andrelton Simmons, which just was awful. So I was hoping we would have gotten Correa, honestly. I thought his profile would have fit best long term, moving to third base if you got Ed Howard or Christian Hernandez moving up who want to play short full time. But I'm not mad with Dansby. I think him and Nico up the middle is going to be one of the most impactful middle infield defenses the major will see this year. I think their range is phenomenal. I think their chemistry is already good. I'm not as much worried about his bat if everybody else on the team can kind of pick up around him. I think Dansby's going to be good for a 270 average. I think if he gives you 15 to 20 home runs, that's all you can ask out of him. Just tell him to play short, tell him to focus on making the plays, keeping the pitchers quick on the mound. I like it. 7 years. I was so worried that his contract was also going to be over 200 million. Just the way that everything
Yeah,
else was going. When Xander got, what did he get? 281, 280 something from the Padres over 11
something like that.
years. When that happened, I was like, crap, this is going to be a 220, 230 kind of deal just because of the way the market goes. And when I saw that, I think it's 277 or 177 over 7 for Swanson. All I could ask for at that point. Keep it under 200 million. Perfect for him. Like I said before, we got Tucker Barnhart, backup catcher to back up Jan Gomes. I think the Cubs, I don't know what they're going to do after this year at the catcher position, too. I think they're really banking on Miguel Amaya, their top catching prospect, to stay healthy and kind of take the reins. But if not, I don't really know what the direction is going to be. But I know now they're focusing on defensive catchers. I'm getting it out of my system that I'm expecting the 9-hole hitter, the catcher, to hit. I'm not. Like at this point, they're there to guide the pitching staff. They're there to defensively save runs. If they give me a double, if they give me a home run every once in a while, that's fine. But I got to get in that mindset after having Contreras for all those years that our catcher is not going to hit well. And that's okay
Yeah.
because you've got other guys in the lineup to do that. Everybody plays their role. Trey Mancini, Eric Hosmer, the two first base signings. I love the Trey Mancini signing. Love it. I've always liked him as a player. His story is, heartwarming. He's a great guy. He can play first. He can DH. He can play the corner outfield spots. He's a great clubhouse guy. And I think we needed somebody or somebodies, which we ended up getting, to not give Mervis the pressure of being like, you have to be that dude right now. You are the heir to Anthony Rizzo, and we're putting all this expectation on you to come up and hit 30 home runs and post like a 5 WAR your first year. Let him start in the minors, which is what they're doing. Let him get comfortable, and then I would guarantee you at the deadline, I don't think we see Hosmer on the team anymore if Mervis is doing well at AAA. But yeah, him and Hosmer were two kind of, we needed those roles at that point at first base. I like the signings. I think they'll pay off well. Hosmer should be fine. Nothing more than a first base DH bench bat at this point in his career. What else happened? Oh, we traded. This was the one thing that kind of disappointed me this offseason. I'm not going to lie. I really expected the Cubs to be a lot heavier on the trade market. We have a
Yeah.
lot of interesting prospects. We had a lot of holes, and there were a lot of guys who got. I mean, I guess there wasn't a lot of guys who got moved. Sean Murphy was a guy that I thought the Cubs could have looked at if they wanted to go that route. And don't even get me started on the package the A's got back for him and how abysmal it was, and how the Brewers somehow ended up with William Contreras in that deal. I don't want to talk about it. But Sean Murphy was a guy I thought they would have, targeted. There were other young, controllable starting pitchers, but they only made 3 trades, or 2 trades actually. They only acquired one person according to this. Miles Mastroboni, the utility player from the Rays during the Rule 5 draft 40-man squeeze. They got him for Eric Ullman, or for Alfredo Zagara, traded to the Rays, and then Eric Ullman was traded to the Phillies. So not a whole lot on the trade front. I was really, really surprised there. We outrighted a couple guys. David Bodie, I don't know what they're going to do with him this year because he's still got a couple guaranteed years left on his deal. He was outrighted. Manuel Rodriguez, hard throwing guy in our bullpen, he was outrighted. and a couple other bullpen arms outright into the minors. So that seems to be the Cubs offseason overview. A lot of big names came in with, you know, question marks as to what they're going to be able to do this year. Um, but as I think this Cubs team just feels different. I think it's less pressure. I think this is kind of the way that I've been looking at it the last few weeks is I've been looking at it as like a Washington Nationals 2019 type scenario. Was that when they won 2019? The
Yeah.
Nationals? Yeah. They were a middle of the pack team. They had a great rotation. You got Strasburg healthy up there. You've got Corbin when he was good, and Scherzer. That's a great 1, 2, 3. Their lineup was not great. You had Juan Soto, obviously, and I think Rendon was still there. So you had big names, but they won like 87 games and won the World
Right.
Series. This team, I think, has a lot more potential than that team does. I think collectively, they're not as top heavy in certain positions, but I think if they do everything the way that they're supposed to be, they could be a team that surprises like the Nationals. Um, but I don't know. I'm just excited to see a lot of these big names put on the Cubby Blue and go to town for 162 this year. I don't think there's a lot more else to it.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that and what you were saying about the 2019 Nats. You definitely had a team that top heavy. Sure, at the time Rendon was one of the top third basemen in the league. They also had Harper. Was that an MVP season for him? I can't
Well,
remember.
Harper wasn't. You talking about 2018 or 2019?
19.
Harper wasn't there in 2019. That was his first year in Philly.
He was. Oh,
He
he
didn't
was in
win the World
Philly.
Series. Yeah, that was the crazy thing because
That's
he left.
brutal for Harper.
He left, and the year he leaves, the middling team he thought he left won the World Series. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
It's crazy.
Oh, right, because it's. I remember the whole thing with the press conference
Yeah.
where he misfumbled. Bring a title back to DC. The Philly press conference. That's embarrassing,
Oh
man.
man, Harper in the playoffs last year, just for a second. My goodness, dude, he put Philly on his back and just ran. And that's what
Yeah.
that's what MLB needs. They need their big stars like Bryce Harper on the biggest stage, putting their freaking team on their back. It was so cool to watch him last year, man. That was a great World Series too.
hmm Yeah, and that's another team that I don't know if it's that the Phillies underperformed last year during the regular season. I think that is part of it. I also think that the team motive and everything completely changed after they fired Girardi.
Yeah,
But when you look at this Cubs team, super similar again, and back to my point on the Harper thing, they don't have a Harper, but they have just a complete team throughout where I don't think the Phillies even had that.
right, right.
I do
Yeah,
think there was holes on that Phillies team, and while yes, they were all clicking come late September and through October, they most of the season those guys showed kind of the player that they really are versus who they were for those couple of months.
yeah, yeah.
Because we see it every October. We see that team that goes further than they probably should have,
Right. And that was the
just
Phillies
based
last year.
on fluke performances. And it might not even be fluke performances. It's just everybody clicking at the same time.
And that's what I also love about playoff baseball more than anything
Yeah.
else is rooting, even if they're the sixth seed, rooting for those underdogs to just pull something
hmm
out. The way the Mariners, I believe it was against the Astros that when they played, they lost against the Astros, obviously, but there was that first game where they went up pretty heavy and. Trying to recall that series from my mind, but that was a great series and an example of when I thought an underdog was going to take out the big dog at that point. But I
Yeah.
love I love rooting for that in the playoffs. That's kind of just where anything can happen, and the Nationals in
Yeah.
2019 are a great example of that.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm thinking we move on to a fun little topic about our three off-season winners and losers. There's a lot that happened this off-season. Arson Judge almost ended up in San Francisco. Carlos Correa, pissed off a couple doctors and lost $600 million in contracts. But I've gone through, I'll start here with my first winner of the offseason. And my first winner is the Phillies. I don't think the Phillies were expected to go back and spend at the levels that they did. Coming off of the World Series loss, I think They didn't really know what they were going to do. I think a lot of people knew that they were kind of in the market for a shortstop, especially Trey Turner specifically. I don't know if anybody thought that they were actually going to land him for what it was going to cost. But not only did they go out and land Trey Turner early in the offseason and set that precedent, they added to the rotation with Taijuan Walker. They made a huge trade with the Tigers for Gregory Soto, which I think a lot of people forgot about. He is going to be a dynamic piece in a Phillies bullpen that was not good last year. They added Craig Kimbrell on a bounce back, Matt Strom. They added Josh Harrison, and I think they added a couple more guys recently. I'm trying to remember here since I typed up my notes last. But to me, when I was going over the teams in the offseason, I never thought that the Phillies were going to spend what they did. And they did, and they proved me wrong. And I think it's great. I think seeing teams like them and the Padres spending after achieving success is absolutely huge for them. Um, so besides that point, I think with Harper out to start the year, um, Turner's going to fit right in that lineup. He's going to hit leadoff. He's going to steal a ton of bags. Um, I think the Phillies did enough to stay at the top of that NL race in the NL East with the Mets and the Braves. And I think if they even missed out on one of those guys, I don't think we would be talking about them possibly in the top three or top two, I guess. In that, I think they'd be a solid three in that division. But yeah, my number
Yeah.
one, I don't know if it's my number one, but one of my three offseason winners is the Phillies.
Well, my first offseason winner was also the Philadelphia Phillies.
There we go. Great minds think alike.
Probably for the same reasons.
Yeah.
My notes here were Turner. What you said that it was early. It was like the first major signing
Oh, the
from a
winter
team.
meetings, especially. I think it was right as the winter
Yeah,
meetings started.
they went out. They got, I would say, the best available shortstop on the
I
market.
would
I
agree.
mean, you're kind of looking at Turner and you're looking at Correa, and you're balancing. Well, Correa's going to give you more offense and power. Turner's gonna just take command of the base paths, and he's your ideal leadoff hitter. So whichever suited your needs better, I think when you're looking up and down the Phillies lineup, they needed that top of the lineup presence.
Yeah.
So they went out, they got their guy, they got Turner, that's great. Same thing with the bullpen. They strengthened that bullpen like crazy. That was
Hmm.
maybe one of their weakest points, and they went out and they fixed it. And then my last note was, they're looking at the Braves, obviously a juggernaut in the East, and the Mets, who are a rising juggernaut in the East, who are not afraid to spend money, and they
Right.
went right at them. I
Right.
thought that was awesome. So, way to be competitive, Philly, way to stay in that division and not, say that last year was a fluke, way to stay there and say we're coming right back next year.
That's the hardest division in baseball, in my opinion. Besides, maybe the AL East is probably harder. I don't know as of now, but I think the NL East is probably, in my opinion, the hardest division in baseball because you've got the Marlins rotation, who can blow up your plans of sweeping. The Marlins offense is not good, but their pitching will shut you down, especially this year. I think they're going to be
Yeah.
sneaky good in the pitching department. Um, and then you've got obviously the Phillies, who are coming off of a World Series. And then you've got the Braves, who are just perennially good every year. They have a culture there. I think that's a tough division. That's a tough division to play in. And
Yeah.
I think
It's my
each
top
team,
division for
yeah,
sure.
I think each team really needed to step it up this offseason, and I think they did for the most part. Let's round back to you. Who was your
Yeah.
second offseason winner?
My second offseason winner are your San Diego Padres.
That's my two as well.
Okay, I went with the Padres. I got a feeling we got the same three winners.
Probably,
Should we just say
probably.
who's your third winner?
You're gonna hate me, but I put the
I just
Cubs.
gotta know.
I put the Cubs as the third
I
winner.
put the Cubs.
Oh,
I put the Cubs.
here we are. Here we are. I think we're gonna differ on the
I did. Well, let's
losers.
break it down.
Okay.
I agree. Let's break it down. I mean, the Padres are obvious, man. They got Xander. They extended Darvish. That was a recent one, and I think they took advantage of a pretty meddling Dodgers team.
Machado today too. Don't forget about him.
Yeah, Machado. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did these notes before. Give
Yeah.
me the break.
No, I did too. I
Um,
did too.
yeah, they locked up Machado. I mean, honestly, I have no doubt in my mind they're probably gonna lock up Soto. Why not?
Your boy
They're
from
spending
last
money
year,
like crazy.
the mustache
I don't
maniac,
want to talk
Matt
about
Carpenter. Matt
it.
Carpenter. A little DH action over there.
I
Michael
want to
Walker.
know all these years of Cardinals devil magic and all this.
Yeah.
It's over. I don't
Yeah.
want to ever hear it about again
Yeah.
because you got Randy Arozarena, you got Sandy Alcantara, you got every single player that leaves the Cardinals including Matt Carpenter, who left after a pretty abysmal season.
Hmm.
He's an all-star somewhere else, and
Yeah.
it's hard to watch, man.
Yep.
It's really hard to watch.
Yeah. I think the Padres too, like to your point, took advantage of the Dodgers kind of neutral offseason, didn't make a whole lot of big moves, saving money for Otani next year if that's what they're doing, waiting out the Bauer
Hmm.
situation. The Padres are taking their window and running with it. I had this discussion with one of my bosses who's a big Dodgers fan, and I told him, I said, look, you're not going to like this, but I think the Padres are going to walk all over the Dodgers this year. I think the Dodgers are going to be good. Don't get me wrong. They've got a lot of great players on that team. The rotation's phenomenal. I think the Padres are going to walk over everybody in the National League this year, and it's not going to be close. You put a healthy for you got to remember last year when they won like they did, they had a down year from Juan Soto. He was not great when he came over from the Nationals. Josh Bell didn't do anything for them. I mean, he had like a 330 on base, but he wasn't the Josh Bell that they acquired. They didn't have Fernando Tatis Jr. at all last year at any point, and the rotation had a lot less depth than it does now. You're telling me after Juan Soto, what he's looking like this spring, he's looking good. You put a
Hmm.
healthy full season of Juan Soto, you get 120 games from Fernando Tatis when he gets back. You get Manny Machado knowing that he's not opting out with no distractions to go and just ball out for that Padres team again. You get Hasek Kim in there, Xander Bogaerts, a guaranteed 290 hitter in the middle of your lineup. And you move Jake Cronenworth from second to first, where he'll probably be a lot more comfortable.
That's a
100,
good team. That's
110
a
wins.
really
I'll
good
say it
team.
right now. They're winning 110 games this year. If they're going to spend money like this too, they're going to go out and get guys at the deadline. It doesn't matter what their price tag is. They're going to go out and
They
get
did it
guys at the
last year.
deadline if they need to. Yeah, like they did it last year.
Yeah.
They
They
will
got
do it.
Soto, they got Bell, they went and got Brandon Drury, who was really good for the Reds.
On paper, if you stack them
They did
up
it last year.
against a lot of the teams, they might not be on paper the best team, but I think they're going to go
I
out and their Slam
I don't
Diego is going
know.
to be popping this year.
I
Popping.
would put them like with the Astros on how good that team looks on paper.
They're good. They're scary.
Personally.
They got depth too. That's the other thing. That's what you need. They got star talent at every position and depth. And that's what you need to
Yeah.
win those games. And I am terrified to face a Padres lineup with Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronin. I mean, it's absurd. The names that I'm saying
Hmm.
that this team has, it's absurd. And I'm sure I'm forgetting people. But then you have a rotation. You're coming in and you have to face Darvish, Snell, and Musgrove, a 1-2-3. No,
Yep.
I'm done. No, thank you. And Josh Hader. I forgot he's at the back of the bullpen still. It's nutty.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nutty. But yeah, they were my two this offseason.
Yeah. Well, of course, number three, your Cubs.
I'll justify it. I didn't want to be biased, but I wanted to put the Cubs on there because again, nobody really knew what the Cubs were going to do this offseason. Was it going to be another year of little minor signings and try to tread water while they wait for the prospects to go? I think the Cubs did enough this offseason to get the fan base interested again, and I think the Cubs did enough this offseason to where, in the chance that almost everybody hits their stride, they will be a very competitive team this year. Our pitching depth is phenomenal. It's unlike anything we've seen over the last couple of years. The quality of our pitching depth is good. We've got a lot of big boy bats in that lineup if they play well. We're looking for a good second year from Suzuki after getting a full season of getting, used to major league pitching. Dansby and Nico up the middle. Nico at a more comfortable position at second, not exerting himself as much anymore. We're looking to see a big step up from Morel. I think the defense is going to be a big factor in it this year. I think they just did enough to where they're either going to fall flat on their face or they're going to soar. And I think that's deserving of a top offseason prize because they went out and did stuff when a lot of other teams kind of just stood pat or made a few little moves here and there.
Yeah, I agree. Same reasons. They got their shortstop for the future. That's great. I think they have a real shot at not only taking second in that division, but pushing the Cardinals pretty hard for first.
Right.
I think that's a real possibility, especially around that middle of the season trade deadline time.
I love how we're both already just counting out the Brewers because it's just like screw the Brewers at this point. They screwed over their ace in
Oh, just wait till we
arbitration.
get the losers.
Uh,
Let's wait till we get to the losers.
yeah.
But I did have an honorable mention winner. I did an
Okay.
honorable mention winner and
Okay.
loser. My honorable mention winner are the Yankees. They retained their guy. They could have easily lost him to the more desirable West Coast, but they got him. They kept Judge, and I thought that was important. So, not enough to take a winner spot, but Good for you, Yankees. You did what you've been saying you do for 30 years, being the big evil empire. You kept your
Yep.
guy. Good for you.
I'm trying to think if I have an honorable mention. Towards I would lean towards the Mets because of the quantity of players they brought in was also quality at the same time. They did spend a
Mhm.
lot. And I'm not a huge proponent of spending huge payrolls to win teams because that doesn't always work. It's nice to see if you're a fan of that team for sure, but it doesn't always work. But I think they lost to Grom, they added Senga, they added Quintana. They made a nice amount of complementary moves to still be competitive and to get better than last year because they didn't have a lot of DeGrom last year. So they added quality guys in their rotation who are going to eat innings. And of course, Justin Verlander. I mean, you've got the best
Of
1-2
course.
rotation punch in all of baseball if they're healthy. If they're healthy. But my honorable mention would go to the Mets in the winners category.
Sure.
All right, let's see. Caleb, let's see if we got any of the same three losers. Who is your, I want to do this, number one loser of the offseason?
Oh, that's tough. I'm gonna say Red Sox.
Wow, they're not on my list. Okay.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'll explain it.
Yeah,
I'll go with it. I'll explain it.
run it.
The Red Sox, this proud franchise that, super historic. That's Fenway, man.
Right.
It's the Red Sox. It's the Boston Red Sox. And they rolled over like a dog this offseason. They
Yeah, they
just
did.
rolled over and took it. They watched their biggest rival, the biggest rivalry in baseball. They watched the New York Yankees retain their 60 whatever home run guy this season. And I just like they couldn't even keep Xander. You're telling
Right.
me that you're gonna let your current franchise guy go
Right.
while your rivals keep Aaron Judge?
Right.
I don't think they got better in any way. They only got worse. Um, the more I talk about this, they might not be my number one, but they're up there. I
Yeah.
just thought I was disappointed with how they responded to, losing Xander, how they responded to Judge getting signed. They just didn't make any big notable moves at all. And I just it got me thinking back, and I know it's not fair to judge them on this for this offseason, but this is a trend. This is what they've done. They gave up Betts for nothing.
Yep.
Uh, you know, I'm not no offense to Alex Verdugo, but you're not Mookie Betts.
Nope.
So,
No, you're
I
not.
don't know. I was disappointed that the Red Sox did virtually nothing to improve their team.
That's fair. Those are all good points. And, with you saying that, I probably would have put him in my top three. I'll say my number one loser. And then you can obviously look at teams like the Athletics. You can look at teams like the Rockies. You can look at teams that are bad and stayed bad. The Pirates, the Reds, yada, yada, yada. My number one loser, and this was very close between two teams. My number one loser was the Chicago White Sox. Sorry, Jess,
Yep.
if you're listening to this, but they fumbled the bag. They have a weak division that there is no clear cut favorite. It's kind of like the Central in the NL, but worse. I mean, we're both Central teams, leagues, divisions, whatever. But
Yep.
there's no dynamic team at the top of that division. They have a great team, and their biggest signing is Andrew Benintendi. They just now got their second baseman. I'm trying to remember who it is, but they just signed a second baseman.
Well, they
If
just signed Andrews.
Yeah, that's who it was. Elvis Andrews. Sorry,
Okay.
I should have had that ready. But they just signed Elvis Andrews, and when there were so many other guys available, you could have traded for Colton Wong, who would have been a phenomenal infield piece, and he didn't cost the Mariners hardly anything. I mean, it was more of a salary dump at that point. The Mariners, I think they traded
Right.
Jesse Winker for Colton Wong in kind of
Hmm.
like a salary swap move. If you're the White Sox, take like a Joe Kelly or something and move him. Take one of your relievers who's making a little bit of money and move him and swap him for a position of strength. Um,
Yeah.
I just think they had so much potential there. And they were such a frustrating watch last year too. The White Sox were. I mean, they have a great team, great players on that team. La Russa obviously played his role in their downfall, but man, you just got to take advantage of that division when you got it. I understand they have a high payroll. I understand they're ran by Jerry Reinsdorf, but man, they could have done so much more. They needed to address their pitching depth. They needed to address second base. They needed to permanently, and they did find a left fielder in Benintendi to hopefully keep Jimenez out of the outfield all season long. But you've got Grandal on an expiring deal, and I don't know. There's just a lot more I feel like they could have done to go over the top. And then losing Jose Abreu, I forgot that was the big thing. They didn't
Yep.
retain their guy. That's the clubhouse leader of that team. That's the glue that kept that team together for so long. And you let him go to the Astros of all teams, a team that if you make the playoffs, you're more likely going to face because you're going to be a lower seed if you don't win the division. Um,
Right.
I don't know, man. They fumbled the bag hard. And my second team, I guess if we'll loop back to me here since we did that with you the first time, second team that
Yeah.
fumbled the bag hard, and I'll give them a little bit of credit. They did make some moves, but you want to talk about not taking advantage of the Dodgers in their offseason? The Giants, man. The Giants
Yeah.
fumbled. It's not their fault with Judge. I was hoping they would have for the sake of chaos. They didn't get Judge. I wasn't expecting them to. It's not really their fault with Correa if the doctor's concerns were actually valid and they didn't want to invest over a decade and $300 million into him. Fine. That's your preference. You went out and you signed Mitch Haniger. You've got Jock Peterson coming back. You go get Michael Conforto, who I really wanted the Cubs to go get, but you go get him. So you've got a nice little outfield going there. They added a couple starting pitchers as well, and I'm going to pull that up as I'm talking about it here. But, man, you didn't get the big name you needed. And San
Hmm.
Francisco needs a star badly. You let Brandon Belt go to the Blue Jays.
Jock's still there, right? Jock
Jock is still
accepted
there,
his
yeah.
QO.
He accepted the QO.
That was so weird.
It was weird. I don't know why they offered it to him, in all honesty. He would have gotten way less on the open market. But you look at the Giants lineup top to bottom. Thairo Estrada, not a strong second baseman. You got Mike Zastrzemski, who had a down year last year in center. Mitch Haniger in right. Peterson, the DH. Conforto in left. David VR is a third baseman. Crawford, Lamonte Wade Jr., and Joey Bart. They
Yeah.
added Ross Stripling and Ross Stripling and Sean Mayana were the two free agent additions. But they've got a really veteran, kind of hit or miss rotation. I was really surprised they didn't land Rodon. I think they could have beat the Yankees offer easily. I think they needed a true ace to go on top with Logan Webb there. And this was the offseason to do it. Next year's pitching class or hitting class is so weak. And
Yeah.
if you were going to take advantage of a year to challenge the Dodgers for the crown in the West, this was the year to do it. And, the two instances aside with Judge and Correa, I think they fumbled hard.
Well, I'll tell you what might bail out the Giants is the fact that I don't think it's the Dodgers they have to worry about beating.
That's true. That's really true. And that they may have
I,
looked at
I
it that way.
I don't think there's a move they could have made that would have put them past the Padres.
Right. I agree with that.
So, if you're going for glory, if you want to play second to the Padres and try to beat the Dodgers, that's great. I don't blame them for the Correa situation because the Mets went through the same thing.
Right.
It's tough. I will give them credit. They were the first team to make that signing.
Yeah.
I know it didn't work out, but they were actively trying to sign this guy. But like you said, they just didn't really do anything major and I know they're still kind of waiting to see how things work out with like Joey Bart, but I don't know. I was talking about the Boston Red Sox and their, proud historic franchise. Giants aren't much different. And
Right.
I mean, the Giants and from 2010 to 2018, 17, whatever, pretty dominant run in the
Right.
playoffs between their World Series wins and just being there in the NLCS and all things considered. It's just really unfortunate to see the Giants kind of fizzle out like that.
Yeah.
Um, my two losers left were I did pick the White Sox. Same reasons they let their franchise guy walk over a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
You're not
I
going to
know.
keep Abreu over a three. Come on, man.
Pay him.
You
Pay the
can't.
guy.
Reinsdorf or not, you have to be better than that. They took their best, their Cy Young pitcher with Dylan Cease,
Right.
and they surrounded him with a guy who might not even pitch.
Right.
I don't know if Clevenger's going to pitch or not, but they brought Clevenger and Benintendi were their only big moves, and I don't know. Benintendi is a step above a fourth outfielder, so I would like to say that they'll be a better team. I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of my thing with the White Sox, and this is coming from a guy who went to a lot of White Sox games last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. You were there.
Ton of White Sox games, man. Um, Great stadium, great place to park. Terrible product on the field last year. So hard to watch. So many blown games. My final loser, and then I'll reveal my honorable mention. My final loser was the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yep.
Similar reasons. This is a super winnable division. I love the Cardinals. You can win this division.
Easily. With that
Yep.
rotation the Brewers have, you can win the division.
Yep. And one of my biggest reasons for them being a loser is they decided to take their ace, their former Cy Young winning pitcher, and piss him off over less than $1 million.
Yep. Yep. How stupid can you be? I mean, that franchise is poverty to begin with, but how stupid can you be? Pay him. If you want any chance of retaining him now, pay him, especially if it's over less than $1 million. Like,
Like, we don't have to tell people that the arbitration process is dumb. I get it.
yeah,
But when I hear an argument like, "Ooh, you're discrediting the process if you just agree to his terms,"
no.
we're not talking about, you know, utility man Joe Schmo here. We're
Right.
talking about
Corbin freaking
Corbin
Burns,
Burns, one of the best pitchers
top
in the
five
last
pitchers in all
20
of
years.
baseball. You could argue
Yeah,
5 or 10 at
it's
least.
insane, this
Yeah.
guy. And you say he had a down year last year. This is better than any pitcher the Cardinals had, better than any pitcher most of the teams in the league had. So I don't know. It doesn't seem worth disgruntling him
No.
over chump change
No.
to
And
their
in all
owner.
honesty, hey, Brewers fans, I'm looking directly, or not Brewers fans, Brewers ownership, I'm looking at you in the camera. You could have made the 700,000 difference just on charging Cubs fans parking for Brewers games. Parking is like 4 times as much for Cubs Brewers games. Allocate all that money and you would have had it because you know we fill up your stadium and we'll do it again this year. You could have had it, but no, you chose to piss
Yep.
him off and hopefully he's a Cub in 2 years. What? Um,
No, it's interesting that they chose to basically do nothing. I know they made some moves. I'll give them credit for somehow ending up with William Contreras, but
so mad.
I don't consider Jesse Winker to be that big of an upgrade over Colton
Nope.
Wong.
Nope.
It's a middling team to me, and I think if you have the Chicago Cubs with what they're hoping to get out of their lineup, it's no doubt in my mind that they'll be the second place team, and the Brewers will be third.
Yep.
I just would have to think, if that is the case, I don't even think Corbin Burns is going to be a Brewer come July.
No, I agree with that. I think if they fall out, one of my predictions for this year, which we'll talk about in a later episode, is that the Brewers have one of the largest fire sales we've seen in recent trade deadlines. Just because even if they're middle of the pack in the Central, I don't think they go for it, and I don't think they can afford to stand pat, especially with the relationship they have now with their starting pitcher. I think you maximize. They each have 2 years left. Him and Woodruff, maximize what you get for him. Find a bad contract
Yeah.
spot for Yelich, or if he's playing well, get some value from him. But I mean, you look up and down. There's names on this Brewers lineup. Yelich leading off. Willie Adames is a really good player when he plays well. Rowdy Tellez at first base. William Contreras, Jesse Winker if he has a good year. Luis Urias, he's wild card. Garrett Mitchell, one of their prospects. Tyrone Taylor and Bryce Turang. I mean, it's an okay lineup, but it's not anything that's going to jump out at you. Their rotation's
A
still
lot
really
of
good.
guys trying to figure it out, man.
Yeah.
A lot of guys trying to figure out, you know, how to play ball. And
There's
it's not a sound lineup at all. I know
right.
they have Adames. I know they have Yelich. Yelich has absolutely fallen off.
Yep, hard. I will
But
say this too. Fangraph projections, you can take them as you want, but if you look at them on the surface for this year, what they're projecting, there's not a single hitter in the Brewers lineup or bench that's projected to hit over 250 this year, batting average.
well,
The
doesn't
high,
surprise me.
the highest on base percentage projected, as I'm looking right now, is Jesse Winker's 358. Next up is Yelich's at 353, and then there's not much else after that.
Yeah.
I'll take that for its value. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the results at the end of the year. But all right, give us your honorable mention because I'm really intrigued to see who your honorable mention loser is.
The Dodgers.
Yep. Okay. Yep. You could
Yep.
go that.
Got to
You
go
could go that.
Dodgers. Sorry, Dodgers fans, if you're listening, it's nothing against you. It's nothing against your team. You have a really solid team. I just think that you watched the Padres improve at every aspect of the game and did almost nothing besides JD Martinez to improve yourself.
In their defense, I'll give them Miggy Rojas was a nice move to supplement shortstop. I will give them that. Noah Syndergaard is an interesting piece in the
Hmm.
rotation. Alex Reyes was a nice off pickup, but I get what you're saying. They could have done a lot more and they didn't. And they probably won't, in my opinion, win the West this year. I don't think they're going to be up top. I think they'll make the playoffs, possibly,
Oh,
but
yeah, yeah.
I don't think they're going to win the West. All right, if you got anything else on the Dodgers,
Nope.
okay, my off-season loser, or loser honorable mention. I don't know if I win a third team, but I'll go with what you said because I agree with it. The Brewers. Don't hate me, but I'm gonna say the Cardinals, and here's why. And I think we've talked about
Love to
this
hear it.
briefly before. Contreras is a great signing. I'm worried about the depth of their pitching and the lack of moves they made to address it. You know their system better than I do. You know the prospects you guys have. I believe your rotation right now is you have Montgomery, you've got Flaherty, you've got Wainwright, you've got Michaelis, and you've got Steven Matz right now, 1 through 5. Right, not in that order, but that's your 5 that I think you're entering the season with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think Hudson is the odd man looking out
you've
or
got
looking
Hudson, Libator
from
will
the
probably
outside in.
start in AAA, and Libator struggled. Matz was hurt last year. He was not good when he was healthy. You don't know if you're going to get the same Montgomery that you got last year at the deadline again.
Hmm.
You don't know. I would put money on Wayno holding up this year, but you can't guarantee that he's 40.
Yeah.
How much does he have left in the tank this year? And Michaelis, I think, is a wild card at this point. You really don't know if you're going to get a great season from him, if you're going to get a mid season from him, if you're going to get a down season from him. I think Contreras being the only really big signing doesn't look favorably on them in the depth instance. I think, you know, I don't know who exactly on the free agent market this offseason was like a prime target for the Cardinals. Excuse me, if there were any. But I think there could have been a lot more depth moves made, in my opinion, to help solidify them at the top of that division. Because I think even one of those guys in the rotation gets hurt, if they were performing well, it's going to be tough to match that performance for however long they're out for. God forbid if it's like half or a whole season.
Yeah.
And like I said, you know the system better than I do, and this is not me trying to, knock you the first episode, putting the Cardinals on my honorable mentions. But just from a baseball fan standpoint, if I were the Cardinals fans looking in, I'd be excited about the team, but I'd also just be a little worried about injuries this upcoming year and how that's going to play in, especially just on the pitching side. I'm not worried about the hitting side of things. You guys can literally pull a name out of a hat. He could be in high A ball, and he'd come up and hit 330 and like 500 against the Cubs. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm just a little worried about the pitching depth, and I think that was an area they really could have strongly addressed this offseason in order to stay at the top, and they didn't, and that's why they're on my honorable mention list.
No, I think there's reason to be concerned, especially with half the rotation participating in the World Baseball Classic. I think you also have to
That's
be
true.
concerned with the
Yeah,
innings limit. Um, no, I think it's unfortunately it's a rotation where they're either going to click and be amazing or really struggle because it's a lot of question marks. You do have a Steven Matz who barely pitched last year. Um, I think I've doubted Michaelis enough to just not doubt him anymore. I think he's just gonna do what he's gonna do because I doubted him last year and the year before, and he was good both years.
yeah,
So that's sort of the thing. Um, Wainwright, I think it's a toss up. I'm curious to see how he performs without Yachty. He's obviously pitched without Yachty, but without Yachty even being a part of the team, I think that'll
right.
be interesting. Um, and like you said, there's question marks with some of the other guys, and Jordan Montgomery. It's just such a short sample, so I think we'll see.
Yeah,
Um, I would really like to see a guy like Dakota Hudson be so good that they have to find a spot for him. But I was watching him in the spring training games and he looked terrible.
yeah. I mean, you
He
take
just
spring
he
training
didn't
for
look
what it
good.
is, but
He couldn't even finish an inning, and I
yeah,
just think that's a bad sign. So
yeah,
hopefully what you're saying, yeah, it's a spring training game, dude. Relax. Hopefully that is the case. But it's not Hudson's first time in the show. This is his
right,
third or fourth season, so it's time to
right.
either produce or get to the back of the line. Let somebody else have your spot.
Yeah, and I think we'll see it. The Cardinals are in it. I do think they've made a couple pitching pickups the last couple trade deadlines. I think that'll be the case again. Veterans who are on expiring deals or guys who have 1.5 years left or whatever it may be will pick up the slack if there is any in the rotation this year. We did
Yeah.
have on our schedule to go over MLB over unders, but we are a little over what our projected time was going to be. I think we're about an hour 10 at this point. So I think that's something
Okay.
I honestly think we could make most of our next episode because that way we can go in depth on each team, kind of see what we like about them and their win totals. And then next
Yeah.
week's episode will also give us a chance to kind of recap the first full week of spring training for both teams, things we saw, injuries, storylines, anything along those lines. But I think this was a great first episode. A lot talked about, a lot got off the table, and hopefully we'll be able to stick to a nice recording schedule, get one of these out a week, and it'll be really nice when the season gets underway, we can do recaps of the league and the teams and everything that went along. But I'm glad we're finally doing this, and glad we're here. Episode 1 in the books.
Me too, man. Glad we
Awesome.
got it out of the way.
Well,
Felt good.
thanks for everybody who tuned into this episode. If any of you did, we're glad that you're here. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you see this on any of our social channels, go ahead and hit the share button on that. You can find us at our Twitter handles below on the screen here. Feel free to drop us all a follow if you want to see my Flaming Hot Cubs takes. If you want to see Caleb make fun of me for my Flaming Hot Cubs takes and the replies, you can follow him on Twitter and all of his Cardinals content. And then right in the middle of the screen, you've got the Ivy in the Yards Twitter account. We'll post clips of the videos here. We'll retweet Cubs Cardinals stuff and give our takes on, baseball news that's happening. And we will see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.